The NBA offseason is nearly behind us, but there is one potential domino that is looking to still fall. LeBron James picks up his 1 year player option with the Los Angeles Lakers, opts into it for 1 year, I believe $52.3 million. But after that, it says that he's open to being traded. He's not happy with the current situation of the team, looking like that they're trying to move to the next chapter of the franchise and start building around Luka Doncic. LeBron, for the first time in his career, is looking like he might have to take a back seat, and that is not sitting well with the King. Rumors have you've been circulating up and down the timeline anytime you go on Twitter, NBA reporters, whatnot. The noise is certainly out there, and more times than not, when there's smoke, there's also fire. So could LeBron James be headed out of Los Angeles? The only path of this happening would be through a trade. You would obviously have to be able to match the salaries as well, or trade him to a team with an abundance of cap space to be able to take his max deal in on this 1 year deal. But the Philadelphia 76ers are in a situation where they have a player under a max contract that hasn't really been living up to his contract. He's also from the West Coast, headed out, a Los Angeles native, just about. And his name is Paul George, and he's upset with, I think he's been upset with his Sixers tenure. The Philadelphia 76ers front office and the Philadelphia 76ers fan base have been upset with Paul George and his production thus far and inability to stay on the court. Could it make potential sense for a LeBron James for Paul George swap, as well as Sixers probably in return there trading an asset away? From a Los Angeles Lakers perspective, I don't know why you do it. I would really just kind of try and make, one final push here with LeBron. That has been rumored that this could be his last season in the league. Obviously, that announcement would come before the season. There would be a whole farewell tour, retirement tour, and whatnot. But LeBron's still playing great basketball. We'll talk about that in just a minute. He could certainly play a few more years, but it might just be time for him to hang it up. Would they welcome in Paul George and bring him in and take on that contract? If I'm the Philadelphia 76ers and this deal is presented to me and there's any realistic scenario that this happens, I think you have to say yes, 10 times out of 10, 100% of the time you would accept this trade offer. The 76ers receive LeBron James, the Lakers receive Paul George, Ricky Council, and a 2028 first via the Clippers. Now that Clippers pick is the, wanted asset in this. When you look at the Clippers and their roster this year, I think this is a championship level roster. If it's a roster that was constructed in 2014, 2015, that team might have the best record of all time in the NBA. You look at Bradley Beal, Kawhi Leonard, Chris Paul, James Harden, Brook Lopez, Nico Batum. That is a really good team, but they're old, and it's certainly a win now club. Once these guys, a few more years down the line, not all these guys aren't going to be around anymore. That Clippers team could be headed in the wrong direction, and that could be a very valuable asset. So you're saying maybe the Sixers should actually hold on to it. But I think it's worth it to be able to get off of the Paul George contract. You bring in LeBron, you're only tied to him for 1 year, and it sounds like, as we said, it could be his last potential year. If not, he hits the free agency market, and you're off that contract as well as the Paul George contract. And you give me LeBron James 10 times out of 10 right now over Paul George, especially on this Sixers roster. I think, especially with the uncertainty of Joel Embiid and his availability throughout this season, the front court's going to be thin no matter what. But the Sixers' main issue, I think, right now is on the wing and kind of at the power forward spot. You slide LeBron James right into that slot. And I know this is kind of an unrealistic scenario. I probably put it at below a 10% chance that it actually happens. But it really makes a lot of sense on paper, Philadelphia-wise, and then LA-wise, if you're trying to really build for the future and continue to build, around Luka, that's going to be a great asset to have, whether you want to use that as a draft pick, that 2028 pick, or look to flip that and hopefully bring in some other talent for that roster and to build around Luka. I don't think when you look at the Los Angeles Lakers roster right now, from top to bottom, I'm not putting them in the top 4 or top 5 rosters in the Western Conference. Like, I'm putting the Clippers above them, I'm putting the Nuggets above them, I'm putting the Thunder obviously above them. Probably putting the Mavericks even, I think, top to bottom, the craziness of the trade last year, I think top to bottom, depth-wise, you look at that team, I might even put them above them. Probably the Timberwolves as well, just with what they've shown, what they've been able to do throughout the playoffs, and Anthony Edwards continuing to rise his game. I don't think that's a championship level team next year. So it brings up to the question as well, why would you bring in Paul George? Why would you take on all that money in that contract? There's not as much pressure on Paul George, I think, out there as there would be here. He's not going to be asked to do as much as I think he could be in Philadelphia. Also, like, why would you take on that contract? Like, that's the main thing. The Lakers, if are the Sixers able to eat some of that money, pay some of that money, and not get charged against the cap, maybe you're able to do it. But I think from a Sixers perspective, you bring in LeBron, you try and make one final run to the NBA Finals with him. That would certainly be a fun thing. Give some life back into this franchise, and also get off the Paul George contract. The best of both worlds for you. LeBron unhappy with the Lakers. Is he going to be a locker room mess this year potentially? That question could arise. And if he doesn't want to be there and he wants to go somewhere and be the man, which I think Embiid is the franchise face right now. But you bring in LeBron James, it's kind of hard to tell him to take a back seat in that scenario. So some drama could certainly arise and stir up with this situation happening. But it's a trade scenario I would certainly welcome. This is presented to me, I'm taking this 10 times out of 10. And they've talked about this on the radio. No, this isn't just this is a rumor. This is just an idea, kind of. It's not a firm report, but LeBron doesn't really have a trade market. There's not many teams that can take him in. You basically just swap salaries with him and Paul George, and LeBron's a Philadelphia 76ers next year. And it's not like LeBron has slowed down. He still played last year 70 games and had a really good season, a really productive season. When you look at his numbers last year, 24.4 points, 7.8 rebounds, and 8.2 assists. Shooting about 38% from three at 40 years old. It's pretty insane, the production that he's still having, and playing 70 games. I'd put good money on it that LeBron James next year plays more games than Paul George. He plays more games than Joel Embiid at a 40-year-old age. That's some pretty insane stuff. Is he a great defender anymore? Is he really going to be contributing much on that end? No, probably not. But he gives you a lot of stuff that you were hoping to get out of Paul George that you're not going to be able to get. And he might be a better shooter at this stage of his career. Obviously a better playmaker. 8.2 assists per game still at the age of 40, averaging about 25 a game. 25, 8, and 8 is what LeBron and James averaged last year, at the age of 40 years old. Insane stuff there. I think you'd be crazy from a Sixers perspective not to accept this deal, not to take this deal. Poor Ricky Council out the window as well. Didn't really even talk about that. But you are parting ways with a potential valuable asset. But I do think if you bring LeBron onto this team and you are able to get half a season of Joel Embiid, and you're telling me Joel is going to be healthy for the playoffs, I don't see any reason why the Sixers aren't the Eastern Conference favorite headed into next year. Literally make this one last finals push and hope for the best. Push all your chips into the table, and I think you get that scenario. And you're also able to free up cap space for going forward. I'm not saying you're trading for LeBron and hoping he sticks around for another 2 years. Hey, if he wins a title, who knows? But if LeBron also wants to win, another finals, I think it's much easier, obviously, to get out of this Eastern Conference than it would be to get out of this Western Conference. So it's a situation I could see him welcoming. When he was leaving the Cavs the last time and he went to the Lakers, he was rumored to be taking a meeting with the Sixers, so they were kind of still in the discussion at the table there. I could certainly see him being the piece with a potential 75% Joel Embiid and the crop of young guards on this team. I could see that being an Eastern Conference Finals type team, Eastern Conference, representative in the NBA Finals. And who knows? You get into a best-of-7 series. Look at the Pacers. They took the Thunder all the way to 7, and I think everyone would say that the Thunder were the better team. But the main part of this as well is you're able to get off that Paul George contract. Look at what he's owed over these next few seasons. $50 million this year, $51 the next, $54, $56. And then he's got the player option, he's got the player option 27, 28. So you would assume he picks that up, especially if he continues to struggle. No one's going to be giving him that amount of money out on the open market. So if you're the Sixers in this situation, why not? Look what Paul George did last year. Look at what his, production was. Only 16 points per game, 5.3 rebounds, 4.3 assists. I think his production, or lack thereof, is kind of overblown. Like, these are solid numbers, but it's not a max contract player. And I think it's just people are fed up with his lack of availability as well on the floor, and kind of pissed off by that. But, LeBron shot the ball better from three. He scored the ball better, rebounded better, assisted more. The list goes on and on. So, Lakers perspective, I don't really think there's a way that you could kind of talk to the fan base there and be like, all right, look at this contract we're going to take on, and we're shipping off LeBron. Only if LeBron is, fully against returning to the Lakers this year, which hasn't been, fully rumored, but it seems like he's a little bit upset. There was also rumors that he was left in the dark about the Lakers trading, the selling of the franchise, selling to Mark Walton, I believe it was, who bought it, and the Jeannie Buss and her family selling the rest of the Lakers. He was kind of kept in the dark about it. They're fully kind of turning the page now, and this is going to be Luka's team, Luka's franchise going forward. And I think LeBron is a little upset, a little butthurt about that. But that would be a hell of a story. LeBron comes to Philly, why did they want this? LeBron doesn't want to be there. You're able to still get a good productive player, I think, at this stage of his career in Paul George. Not certainly going to live up to that $50 million contract, but you also get a good asset to help you with your kind of rebuild or remolding of this team around Luka Doncic. So I'd love to see what you guys think in the comments below. An unrealistic trade scenario, but would be a fun one, would be an exciting one, and would certainly make some headlines and for a more exciting Sixers season. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As always, please drop a like, please drop a subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time here on Sixers Digest.